cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of the Top Cut Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast. My name is Sunny. I am here with my co-host, Giant Skyhawk.
Factually, yes, that is who I am. I am Giant Skyhawk, co-host of the Top Cut Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast.
I guess I'm not actually here with you if we're getting factual.
You make a good argument, actually.
Yeah.
I'm across from you in
We're
some
here in
cosmic
spirit.
sense.
Yeah. Well, of course, thank you for joining me, Skyhawk. And before we get too far in, we do want to thank all of our wonderful sponsors. So a huge thank you to, of course, Steelfox Games and ETB Games for their continual support of the podcast. We also want to thank, of course, Gem Accessories for their support. And if you are going to go ahead and check out Dragon Shield, they have the new custom sleeves for Japanese size that you can go ahead and check out. And if you're going to do anything like that, be sure to use our affiliate link in the description down below. Costs you nothing extra. And I still haven't ordered mine. I'm gonna order some custom sleeves, but I promise I will. But in the meantime, if you want to go ahead and use our code, you can go ahead and get yourself some new custom Japanese size sleeves, and I think that you'll really enjoy them. My understanding is that they're the same quality as the Duel matte sleeves that they normally put out.
You mean the affiliate link, right?
That.
Yes. Wait, use the link in the description and not an imaginary code.
Yeah, that. So, anyway, us. Support us. Yeah, that. Of course, we also want to thank all of our wonderful patrons for their continued support of the podcast. Again, if you want to get an extra episode every week, all you have to do is join the $5 and up patron tier. If you want your name in at the end of every episode, you can do that in the $1 and up tier. And starting in the $5 and up tier, we do have little Patreon merch things that go out every month. So be sure to check that out. Also, I promise, I swear, in the $10 and up tier, we're going to do the live streams. We're going to start back. I think as soon as potentially this week. We'll see. We got to work on scheduling for that, but because we need to do the one for June. So, of course, also, we do want to, there was something else I wanted to
shout out. You shout out Gem Accessories?
I already did that.
Okay.
Anyway, welcome to today's episode. We do have quite a bit to talk about today. We've got quite a bit of news, notes coverage, and even some discussion to be doing. I am actually going to do a bit of a quick pivot, something we haven't done before. We are going to talk about... We do polls pretty regularly in the Discord server, and I keep saying that we're going to do these polls and discuss them on the podcast. I have a mod specifically making these polls for us to discuss on the podcast. Shout out to you, Mirren, for continually doing these polls and us never talking about them. So we got 4 of them that we're going to knock out real quick, get caught up, and then we're going to make this a thing we do at the beginning of episodes. That way we don't forget. We just have to make sure not to fall down the rabbit hole of talking too much about them.
Deal. Okay. I mean...
Yeah. So, we are going to do which Xyz ranking has the best toolbox. Or did we already do this one?
We did this one, but it may be on a lost episode. Oh, no, we did this one. We did this with GGYGO.
Okay. We agreed rank 4?
Yeah, I think we agreed rank 4 with an argument to be made for Zeus in rank 8.
Yeah. Which deck will have the most success in the new format? Did we do this one?
I don't think so. It's kind of weird because I think the answer has changed now that we really are in like a kind of a new format.
Yeah. So the options were Runic Live Twin Sprite, Kashtira, Branded, Labyrinth Runic for Hire, Sky Striker, Rika Sun Avalon, Sword Soul, Melfi Sprite Runic, and Other. I personally, I chose Melfi Sprite Runic when this poll came out. I haven't changed my answer. I've kept my answer exactly the same. I think that Kashtira was like the very obvious choice, and can't fault anybody that picked it, which it was the most popular choice, that and Other. But I think Hashira is very popular as well as Labyrinth. And the third most popular deck, at least today, was the Runic for Hire deck. So,
yeah, that's true. If we look at the spoilers, maybe for later, but no live twin variants of Sprite topped, and I think that's what people were expecting, was that live twin of Runic Sprite to do well, but we had none in the remote dual YCS, and I know there were people who entered with it, so it's it will be interesting. I'm super curious to see what's up.
I think this is one of those formats where you're just going to see different Sprite Runic variants topping every single event.
Yeah, like, I mean, that's kind of the case when you have a deck that has like an engine that can fit everything in it, right? Like you can, anything that gets advantage, like For Hire gets advantage, Live Twin generates advantage, anything that can jam the cards. Well, like Gishki Sprite was something people were talking about before the Elf ban. So anything that has that type of variation will always be able to find a niche in a format, because something is going to have game. Yeah.
So I think the third one is, although I do appreciate Swordsoul being in there, it's not the best. What Yu-Gi-Oh monster would you let step on your chest? Shout out to Sunny for this one. Listen, the cook girl from the Duel's archetype is just something different. But the options here were Witchcrafter Jenny, Witchcrafter Jenny, a surprising pick also in Witchcrafter Jenny, and of course Soul Eating Oviraptor. The winner of this poll was Soul Eating Oviraptor, which I never made a vote, so I'm just going to go ahead and vote.
Listen, hear me out, okay? I'm as you can see by this image that I'm flashing on the screen that Sunny cannot see, because of the way we're recording right now. I am a very big fan of Soul Eating Oviraptor, and
yes,
and we will leave it there.
Okay, my question though is, would you let Soul Eating Oviraptor step on your chest, because he's got some big claws?
You know what? I think that would be a good way to go.
R.I.P. Skyhawk. All right, next. I think this is the newest poll, so we'll be all caught up. What is your favorite evolution? So this is actually going to be a surprising one, Skyhawk, because I think you and I think that we have
the same answer?
Potentially the same answer here, because obviously the options are Eevee, the original, of course. Vaporeon, Jolteon, Flareon, Espeon, Umbreon, first two gens, of course. Gen 4's Leafeon and Glaceon, and then, of course, you have Sylveon from Gen 7?
Yeah, Sylveon's Gen 7. So my answer to this question is Jolteon. I played the absolute heck out of Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. And at the beginning of that game, you can choose between Jolteon, Flareon, or Vaporeon. Whereas in you just start with Espeon and Umbreon and Colosseum.
Sure.
My ride or die duo in XD Gale of Darkness was Jolteon Walrein. But I don't know this was at the time, I didn't know anything about how to construct teams at all.
Sure.
I always just led with Jolteon Walrein. So Jolteon is my answer.
So Jolteon was actually my answer too, because I found that it's so funny. We have an answer for literally the exact opposite reasons.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, I played the snot out of Pokemon Red version because, as mentioned previously, I kind of grew up on hand-me-downs of a lot of things. And me and my friend would talk about Pokemon Red at school. I didn't know he was playing Pokemon Fire Red, and I was playing Pokemon Red version. And I didn't know that there was a remake of Pokemon Fire Red. A Pokemon Red version. I didn't know Fire Red was a thing. So one day we're like, oh yeah, we're going to trade. And when I show up, we go to hang out. We're at each other's houses. And I go to hang out at his house, and he has Pokemon Fire Red. And I'm like, what is that? He's like, this is Pokemon Fire Red. It's for the Game Boy Advance. He's like, what is that? I'm like, this is Pokemon Red version for the Game Boy Color. And he was like, huh. And I was like, huh. Neither of us had any clue. He didn't know that it was that old. I didn't know there was one that knew. But when I played the snot out of that game, I always made a Jolteon because of the way that my team was otherwise constructed. I needed a way to cover flying types because I always went Bulbasaur as my starter. So I needed a way to cover flying types, so I always made Jolteon to cover flying. Which, the more I think about it, I probably should have gone Vaporeon and just used Ice Beam. That way I can also cover fire, but whatever. I was a child. And I always picked Jolteon, and the more I picked it, the more I was just like, I liked how fast Jolteon was. He always hit first, which I loved. So, I don't know. I've just always liked Jolteon. And then I never really played Gen 2. Umbreon's cool, but I like Jolteon more. Jolteon's spiky, and he's fast. So
I love the yellow. I love the spikiness.
I love the little white around the neck.
Yeah, it's honestly like all of the evolutions are good. It's just that Jolteon is my favorite one.
Yeah. I don't have anything against any evolution at all, except for maybe Sylveon, because personally I feel like they kind of gave it Sylveon to just kind of boost the fairy representation within the game and push the new fairy typing, while also making Sylveon kind of broken, because I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, new evolution, and it's the new typing, right? And
we gotta have a new sauce.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like they pushed Sylveon a little too hard, and that kind of frustrates me, but whatever.
I think Sylveon is cool. Like, I think it's. I think if we're talking design wise, I think Leafeon and Glaceon probably are the coolest for me.
I've always loved the designs of Leafeon and Glaceon, like really.
Yeah. And I will say their evolution gimmick is a bit it's a little bit time consuming, but
yeah.
I love the designs.
I don't think the evolution gimmick is as bad as Umbreon and Espeon, and I don't know exactly how you evolve Sylveon, to be honest with you.
Friendship.
Yeah, I hate that. It just let me go stand by a rock and give a rare candy.
Sunny, out of context. I'm gonna make that short when we're done. Friendship. Yeah, I hate that. That's just going on the channel now.
I'm here for it. Take a timestamp. Anyway, all right, let's get into talking about the actual game that we are here to talk about, which is Yu-Gi-Oh! So maybe put a little thing at the beginning of the video that says, like, skip to 13-minute mark if you want to hear about actual Yu-Gi-Oh!
If you don't care about Jolteon,
yeah,
screw you. But also, here's the skip button.
So we have the announcement of the next core set, which is the first bit of news to cover. This is called Phantom Nightmare. So this is the third core booster pack of 2023. The release date is October 23rd of this year. This will contain cards for old themes as well as new themes, as most core sets do these days. And of course, there will be quarter-century secret rares included within this set. And that's it. That's all the information that we have. Yeah. And that October release date is for the OCG.
Yeah, so I think there's only one kind of weird consideration here. So this set will have quarter-century secret rares in the OCG because at that time it will still be the 25th anniversary. But it's possible that this set comes out in January for us, or even February. So
probably February.
Yeah. My guess is they will probably still include the quarter-centuries, even though we're not technically in the quarter-century. But it's possible that they remove them just for time frame reasons.
Which would be bogus.
It would suck, but I'm just saying, like, there is maybe a universe where that happens. I think it's unlikely, but it's possible.
It would big time Omega suck. There's a universe where it happens for sure. But all that would be is the latest slight against the TCG by Konami. That's all that would be.
Right. Which, right now, they're I mean, like, the 25th anniversary set, I think they should just be trying to continue the W's. But anyway.
Yeah. All right. Next week, speaking of the OCG, let's talk about they got a new Forbidden Limited list announced as of recording today, this morning. Yep. This was announced Sunday morning. This is the July 1st, 2023 limit regulation for the OCG. I'm just going to blow through this, and I'm going to be honest, I'm going to read these cards off really fast because we can take it one section at a time, but quickly.
Yeah,
because
we'll do one section at a time. I actually
it's not
have
relevant
a few comments on these, but yeah.
Yeah. The Forbiddens are Kashtira Fenrir, Super Heavy...
you missed a Forbidden card.
No, I didn't. Kashtira Fenrir,
yes,
Super Heavy Samurai Soul... So wait, no, it's the third card on this list that I'm looking at.
I'm looking at the list I sent you. Okay,
I'm on YG Organization, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Kashtira Fenrir, Super Heavy Samurai Soulbreaker, Cyber Sign, and Smoke Grenade of the Thief. So Cyberstein makes sense because it's an FDK go, go, go. Smoke Grenade because it's cancer. So that makes sense. Cashier Fenrir, kind of wild. It was already limited over there. It's kind of wild that they are also banned it. But honestly, I'm fine with it. I think that this card should be limited in the TCG as well. A lot of people are like, no, it should be semi-limited. And I'm like, no, this card is stupid and dumb. And it searching itself is just not cool. Like,
it's really strong. It makes when you use it, I was on the train of like, please don't hit Fenrir. It's cool generically. But like, being able to add itself just means that like removing it becomes like such a terrible decision. Because if you remove it after it adds itself, they just special another one. And if you remove it like when it hits the field, you run the risk of them just summoning another one.
Yeah,
so it's like,
so you should ban Fenrir or limit it.
Yeah.
So
one thing for those who do not know, Super Heavy Samurai Soulbreaker Armor might be kind of a strange card to see as forbidden. This is an FTK. This card burns you for like you use Transporter to give your opponent a big Benkei, and then you burn them for like you reduce the big Benkei's attack with Ancient Gear Ballista and its defense to 0, and then you get 3 of these in your graveyard. You banish them and you burn them for 35 3 times per game. So they're just banning an FTK is what they're doing here.
Okay. I was wondering why Soulbreaker specifically, but that makes sense. Cybersign is the same thing. It's just an FTK. So
just get out.
Newly limited cards. Do you want to take this section?
Deal, yeah. It might be in a different order than yours. So for limited cards, we've got Performa Pal Monkey Board, Mathmech Circular, Super Heavy Samurai Soul Piercer, MX Saber Invoker, Pot of Prosperity, Pearly Sleepy Memory, and Runic Fountain. So stuff that is interesting here. Circular is the same thing that the TCG did.
Right.
The card is really good. Funny enough, still playable. Like, it's still been topping events. It's just not like... It's just Rogue now, rather than the 3rd or 4th best deck. Monkey Board, TCG also did this. Soul Piercer. So the OCG's approach to hitting super heavy is very interesting. TCG just is like, no, you're gone. Get out. OCG is like, you can still play, but we're going to get rid of all the nasty stuff you can do, and we think Soul Piercer is too strong. So that's cool. MX Saber Invoker is kind of wild. We have not had this. I don't really see a reason to unban it. Prosp to 1 is fair. The card is ridiculous. It's kind of a strange way to hit it. I think Master Duel also did this. Pearly Sleepy Memory Limit's kind of interesting. It's a less harsh hit to Pearly than the TCG did, in my opinion. But limiting this spell is still very strong. And Runic Fountain to 1 is like, why didn't the TCG do this? This hit actually does something. But anyway.
I will say I think the Soul Piercer limit makes a lot of sense. I think Monkey Board Circular makes sense. I don't love Circular 1, but it's fine. Invoker's dumb. Prosperity, I love the limit of Prosperity. I love that so much. That should have happened a long time ago. I don't like Runic Fountain to 1 because I like the Runic engine, unlike most people. But whatever, I'm biased.
The Runic engine, I think, is frustrating because if you don't have a good way to interrupt it, it is like draw 6, which is ridiculous. But it enables a lot of very cool rogue decks that have not been able to see play. Like, For Hire has never been good until exactly this point in time, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Semi-limited. Let's talk semi-limited.
You got it.
Armageddon Knight, Super Heavy Samurai, Bike, Prank Kids, Meow Meow Moo, and Block Dragon. Very funny that Meow Meow is doing the opposite of what it is here. Probably because they have the adventure stuff like hit over there to 1, and we don't.
Yeah.
Armageddon Knight, I guess. I don't see a reason to peel it off, but whatever. Super Heavy Samurai Motorbike is literally just a consistency hit, which is something that they love to do over there. And Block Dragon, I'll say it, that's really dumb. Anyway.
Block Dragon to 2 is like Lightning Storm to 2. Were they even playing 3 block? Anyway.
Yeah, they were, for sure.
They were? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Regardless, that card shouldn't be at 1, much less 2.
Yeah, too crazy. Unlimited. So we got Ancient Fairy Dragon from semi to unlimited. Sure. Salamangreat Gazelle from semi-limited to unlimited. Sure. Honestly, that could probably happen here too. Saryuja Skuldred, semi-limited to unlimited. Sure. Tellarknight Toymaeus, semi-limited to unlimited. Nobody cares. Blackwing Steam the Cloak to 3. Who cares? Thunder Dragon Hawk to 3. Who cares? Fire Formation Tenki to 3. Who cares? Nadir Servant to 3. Who cares? Spellbook of Judgment to 3. Who cares? None of this matters.
It's crazy that when Spellbook of Judgment got peeled off the ban list to 1, everybody collectively went, "Ah!" And then now we're saying it could go to 3. Who cares?
It is funny. Well, it's like the Dragon Rulers, right? We're like, Tempest is coming off. Oh! It turns out it did, like, basically nothing. And now Blaster came off, and everyone's like, yeah, this is the one that we've said could come off the whole time. Like,
yeah.
It's wild.
Well, do you want to... So, by the way, we're taking all bets on the new set, the Phantom Nightmare set.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is going to be the retro support here?
It's kind of weird. So
there's 2 options. One's obvious.
Well,
one's not obvious.
So it doesn't have to be named after the support that's in it, right? But like
Correct.
Usually it kind of is. So the obvious answer is Phantom Knights.
Sure.
And I think that Phantom Rage was the last time we got PK support. I wouldn't be surprised if they did a new wave. It's a popular deck. The other possible option is Phantom Beast, which actually is possible because one of the support themes with Phantom Beast was like the Gazelle, King of Mythical Beasts, but that was initially kind of translated as Phantom Beasts from the people who were predicting it. Shoutouts to Pain96. So it's possible that there's Phantom Beast support here, but also it's probably Phantom Knights.
I would like to make a counter argument because of specifically the word Nightmare, not Phantom.
No.
Yubel.
Oh. Wasn't the Yubel stuff Phantom Darkness too?
I don't know. I'm just gonna be honest. I don't know of Yubel ever getting any other support outside of GX.
What's funny, Yubel hasn't had like a reprint in TCG in a long time.
Specifically for the word Nightmare. That's why it popped into my head, and that's what makes sense to me. So
yep. So
yeah.
Yubel's print was actually in Phantom Darkness. So actually that's starting to sound like it might be the case. Well, don't hold your hopes up, GX fans, but it's definitely possible.
I'm just gonna be honest with you. I think there's a much higher likelihood of it being Yubel than Phantom Knights.
I mean, Phantom Knights did just already have a set basically centered around it, so it would make sense for it to be something else.
I really do. Like, I actually think it's Yubel. So,
okay.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the remote duel YCS. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Did I miss any more news before we get into this?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
I think that's it for news.
Yeah, we can go ahead and cover the top 32 the actual top 32 breakdown first, and then we can go ahead and cover the some of the individual deck lists that we have seen.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. So do you want to cover top 32, or would you like me to do it?
You go ahead and cover it.
I got you. Okay, so NA Remote Duel YCS Top 32. It was a small YCS. I believe it was 258 players, something like that. So
it was almost 300.
They announced that the player count was like 255, 258.
Oh, okay.
Before the event started. Yeah. So the top 8. So we've got 8 Kashtira making up 25% of top cut, which makes sense. Still the best deck, but certainly not at the levels that it was. This is a bit surprising. So we've got 5 Dragon Link in top 32, and these are largely the Bestial Dragon Link stuff, playing like Regained Branded Beast, playing it like a very like mid-range kind of advantage deck. And it's actually it's done really well. Trish TV got top 8. We can look at his list later. It's a darn good deck, this format. Next up, tied for third in the representation, we've got 3 Fluanderies players, which as a meta call actually makes a lot of sense, but I'm surprised to see this many. And then after that, we've got 3 Runic for Hire Sprite, proving itself to be the dominant Sprite variant. Like we said earlier, Live Twin is nowhere to be found. There's only one other Sprite deck that tops. We'll get into it. 2 Rika Sun Avalon. I think Rika is solidifying itself as like a real tier 2 option. And having it top NA events as well means it's a real deck. We have to respect it. 1 branded, sure. So 1 Melfi Sprite, and this Melfi Sprite player was also on the adventure package. 1 Labyrinth, 1 Vanquish Soul. Again, Vanquish Soul, like, one of them is topping every event, it feels like. So it's like a real deck you can play, but it feels like a low conversion rate or maybe just low rep.
I feel like this is going to be one of those, like, regional grinder decks, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree. 1 Pirelli, which I'll say is quite surprising.
Yeah.
Post hit, I think a lot of people gave up on this, but there have been a few people really trying to lab it. 1 Super Heavy Samurai, which goes super dummy. 1 Tearlaments,
same thing.
Also kind of the same thing. 1 Sky Striker, which is also quite interesting. The profile
Sky
for that
Striker
is
at
2.
least made top 16.
Yeah. We have 1 Plunder Adventure in top 32. 1 Ignister Mathmech, so Mathmech still being rogue. And 1 Exosister, which ended up winning the event.
Naturally, of course it did.
We're going back to Niagara. Raymond we got another one for you. Exosister, by the way, now has the same amount of YCS wins as branded, which I think is very funny.
I'll be honest, I hate branded. I'd rather Exosister win the more YCSs than branded. But I also don't really like Exosister, so it is what it is.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Sunny hates branded.
Yeah. I hate branded. That deck just needs to go die, says the Sword Soul player. Anyway. Sad that there's no Sword Soul here, of course. Dragon Link makes a lot of sense. The resource loop is crazy. Runic for Hire Sprite, that deck is certifiably insane. People don't realize how good that deck is, but that deck is very good. I don't know, there's just lots of decks with good resource loops here, whether people realize it or not. Like, having a good resource loop is kind of the bread and butter of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. So,
definitely agree. It's also, this is a very diverse metagame. Like, obviously this is a smaller event, but like, this is top 32 of a YCS with a whole bunch of different decks that are able to take a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
So you can build something well and do well with it.
I do think, though, that one of the issues that you're actually going to run into with this diverse of an event is, personally, for me, going into nationals, it's how do you prepare for this many different decks within the meta, right? How do you be able to prepare and side deck effectively for Kashtira, but also Dragon Link, but also Flu, right? But also the different Runic decks, the different Sprite decks, the different Vanquish. Now you have Vanquish Soul, you have Pearly still running around. You have Super Heavy Samurai. You have these high-end combo decks that are going to set up this crazy board. You have these mid-range control decks or even mid-range combo decks with like this Sprite Melfi deck, which this one is a Sprite Adventure Melfi deck. So now you have to account for that too. You know, you have control decks. You have Sky Striker. Labyrinth still is represented here, right? And then, like I said, you have mid-range control with decks like Vanquish Soul, with decks like Pearly. That's what these decks are. These decks are mid-rangey control decks. Even Exosister can attest to that. So, for me, there's so many different decks with so many different playstyles that these are kind of the formats to me where you really end up with, these are, to me anyway, these are the formats that it's less about unfortunately, I think when you get to Nats, you're going to find whatever deck can run the Floodgate that is the most impactful, which is kind of something that we saw last year with Sword Soul being able to run Ravelry, which is very impactful across the meta, as well as Mystic Mine, and have outs in Engine for both Ravelry and Mystic Mine. That was kind of the name of the game last year. I think when you have the cards that blanket hit the most of the meta, that's where you'll see the decks that can effectively utilize the cards that can blanket hit like that the best. The decks that can do that the best are going to be the best decks. So we'll see exactly what we have going forward here, because I don't know, man. It could be pretty disgusting at Nationals. You should probably run Twins or Cosmics or something to account for the potential of Floodgates, because when you have a format that's this diverse, that's the only way to really handle it, is to run Floodgates like that.
Yep. So a couple of things interesting to note based on kind of what you've said about a diverse metagame. There's two things that I think, three things really, but you kind of named one of them, which was the Floodgates. There's two things I think that are worth making an analysis for. I think a wide metagame is something that really, really benefits the Bastille Dragonlink deck.
Yes.
Which, because, for a few reasons. Firstly, it is a deck that can both play through some number of hand traps and is also resistant to some number of board breakers. In a format where people can't decide if they want to be playing hand traps or board breakers because the format is so wide, having a deck that can play under or around most of those cards is super valuable, even if you're making a couple of other trade-offs to play it. And also, again, like, it has a lot of minimal setups, like with Branded Beast and Branded Regained. It's got a good advantage loop. It can pivot to like ripping cards out of hand if you decide you want to play the Diablosis line. So if you want to do like Floodgatey type stuff like Wombo Combo, you can do it post side. And then you mentioned the Floodgates as well. Like, for example, the Melfi Sprite player, Joe Dietrich, also a former YCS champion, is side decking 3 copies of Eradicator. Like, people are just getting on this now. The other the other major format analysis that I want to talk about is that Triple Tactics Thrust is now showing up in a lot of side decks. As if you look at lists that people are playing and lists that people are doing well with, Mike Thomas, for example, his Bastille Dragonlink deck, Dragonlink's strongest warrior, plays it every format without fail. Much respect as a fellow one trick. Is siding Thrust in a bunch of targets. And I think in a format where this is something that you can do, because in a wide format, you want to have answers for as many things as possible. In a side deck, that is kind of not possible to do, unless you play Thrust. Because Thrust lets you play a whole bunch of cards at 4 copies.
Right.
So in a wide format where you need to have options to deal with a bunch of matchups as a deck that you pick, playing Thrust means you do get to play those targets. Now, it's conditional because your opponent has to activate a monster effect, but there are a ton of monster effects right now that are activating. Kashtira has to activate a Rise Hard, and they are also activating a lot of other stuff. Fluanderies, if you can bait the normal trap, the Dreaming Town, they will play into it. I did that this weekend. I won a match because I threatened battle phase. My opponent went Dreaming Town. I thrusted into Foolish Burial Goods for Engine, and then OTK'd them. So not only is it a card that can get you Engine when you're going second into any specific matchup, it'll get you the Engine piece you need. It also gets you exactly the answer that you want for the matchup. So, like the Wombo Combo decks, you bait a couple interruptions. Once they have no more hard negates, you go Thrust into your Engine, and then you win the game. Or you pick exactly the board breaker you want. Mike Thomas, for example, Trishula TV. I should really just be calling him Trish. I don't know why I'm doing this.
Honestly.
It's because his Twitter name is Mike Thomas. Like, the side deck is Triple Tactics Talent, Herald of the Abyss, Feather Duster, Lightning Storm, and Daruma Doll, I presume for Pearly and Mathematic Ignister. Just to out stuff, right? But it can also go get Chaos Space. It can go get Imperm. It can go get Boot Sector if you really need it. And it can also go get Dragon Ravine if you can't get to the Link Master, if you can't get to Romulus. Like, just so many applications for this card in a wide format. So we're going to start seeing a lot more of it.
Yeah, I do think that the... Dude, even in Sword Soul, you can go get Blackout.
Yes, you can get Blackout. You can get Emergence. You can get Emergence with this card. It's a normal spell.
Vessel for the Dragon Cycle.
Yes, exactly.
That's crazy.
Like in Fluffle, for example, it's absolutely cracked in Fluffle because one of the problems that Fluffle has is that the fusion part of the engine is disconnected from the rest of the deck. Thrust is 3 more copies of Patchwork.
Or Poly.
Or Poly, if you just need the Poly to a Guardian Chimera. Or just to have another copy of Poly. And so it gets you any Edge Imp you want plus Fusion Access, or through Foolish Burial Goods, it gets you any Fluffle you want.
That's crazy.
So, exactly. So it also resolves the side deck problem, right? Fluffle doesn't have a lot of room to side deck because the engine requirement is so heavy. Well, you can side deck a little bit of engine out if you are playing Thrust, because those cards are now also engine pieces. So you can build your side deck in such a way that you're actually focusing on Thrust getting your engine when you're breaking boards instead of the breakers.
Right.
So
also,
in a wide format, the flexibility is crazy.
Also, being able to cut down on things like board breakers, right? Because you can use Thrust to go get Dark Ruler no more. You can use Thrust to go get these various different major non-engine cards.
Mm-hmm.
And as you go and get all of these non-engine cards, it would allow you to essentially, like you said, right? When instead of going, okay, well, I'm going to run 3... Okay, well, everybody's going to enjoy no video from me for the rest of the episode. So, anyway.
Sounds good.
My memory card got full.
That's okay. I'll cook something. I'll cook something up to replace you with. I'll make it not Nash this time. I'll come up with something.
Okay. Well, I think though that, like you said, it kind of solves the side deck problem, because instead of going, okay, I'm going to run 3 evenly, 3 Dark Ruler no more, 3 Lightning Storm, which would be 9 cards. I can run 2 Lightning Storm, I guess, whatever, which would be 8 cards. I can run 1 each of those and then 3 Thrust, and that's 6 cards, right? Which therefore increases my side deck space. So now I have room to run other great cards within the meta, things like Kurikara Div Incarnate. I think that card is really, really good into the modern metagame. Yeah,
well, especially because against anything that's activating like monster effects, Kurikara is almost never dead. Like, it's very rare that someone doesn't play into it. Kind of like Thrust, where a lot of the decks you're playing against, it's super rare that they play into it. Like, the Vanquish Soul has to play into Thrust. They really just do not have an option. Tons of decks are in, like, Castira. Castira is a mandatory effect. They have to play into it. So now, importantly, I think if people start getting on Thrust, there is counterplay. And I think there are decks that have ways to create setups that don't care about it. Dragon Link is one of them. If they're worried about Thrust, they could just go like rip 2 cards out of your hand and then end on like a beast and regained to mess with you. Or they can shift to doing like sloth setups. I don't know. But another deck that has good counterplay into Thrust is Rika Sun Avalon. And I think that they can take actually huge advantage of that meta change because of Naturia Rose Whip. The interaction there is that if people decide that they want to play less Dark Ruler because they want to go get it off of Thrust, Rose Whip says you can only activate 1 spell trap per turn. So if you activate the Thrust to go get your spell or trap card. So if you activate your Thrust to go get your Dark Ruler or you're evenly matched, you can't activate it. So there are decks that have play... Exactly. There are decks that have play around them that can take advantage of that shift. But if you're worried about that, you can also just play 3 Dark Ruler, 3 Thrust, some targets, and then you can have like 6 slots for whatever else you want. So like, I think as the meta kind of concentrates, I think Thrust gets worse because people will start to like create setups to play around it, and you'll need to dedicate more side deck space for matchups. But with the format, and it sucks because as it gets really good, the card is really expensive, and if you're not going to large events, you should not be paying for it.
Correct.
But it's really darn good right now.
Yeah, what's crazy is you would think that like without Gamma in the format, it's not quite as good, and with Nibiru not being that great into the format, it might not be quite as good. But no, it's still pretty good.
It's mainly the reason I think we didn't see it a lot last format is actually because there's less droll. Last format, there was a lot more Droll. People are still siding Droll, but nobody's maining it, and not everybody is siding it.
I think you should be maining Droll, by the way.
I think we will probably get there. I think people will start getting back on it. The last major thing with this event to talk about, I think, is the winner, because very unexpected. So Exosister, Steven Santoli, won this event on Exo. They were playing this at the last regional that they attended that I know of, which was the Niagara Falls regional. Ease beat them in Swiss with Fluffle, which was very funny.
Nice.
But obviously a very, very skilled player playing an interesting pick into the meta. Probably quite strong against everything that's not cash. And honestly, like, the deck can turbo out a bunch of stuff to clear cash fields, and they don't care that much about a Rise Heart at all. So it seems like a decent pick, but I didn't think it would have the guts to, like, get all the way through.
Neither did I. Neither did anybody else.
Apparently, but I mean, if it's going to win a YCS, like, you probably have to respect it, right? Like, now you got to think, okay, I have to prepare for this matchup. I don't know how, you don't necessarily need to prepare side deck space, I don't think, but you need to know what it does. So that's kind of news for this weekend. I don't
think Exosisters. Winning the event or not, I don't think Exosister is good. I don't think you need to know what this deck does. I'll be honest.
I think
Ash Martha and move on with your life.
I think you do. I disagree with that take. I think you do yourself a disservice every time that you don't at least give yourself an idea what a deck that is capable of topping an event can do. Obviously,
you are
it is
absolutely correct, and it's not even like it's like it's an objectively correct take, but I also don't think that this deck is like really good.
I think it's fair to say that it's rogue. Like,
yeah, it's definitely rogue.
It's like, it's kind of like, I don't know, Mystic Mine also won a YCS, right? Like,
Mystic Mine won a YCS.
Did you not know about this? Are you serious?
Oh, that's the one that won that South American YCS a while back.
Yes.
Mystic Mine burn deck. That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
I forgot about that. I blocked it out of my memory. I'm
sorry. To be fair, I think nobody has thought about Mystic Mine since it got banned, which, hallelujah.
There's a lot of different takes that I've seen on the ban list, right? I've seen, oh, this card can come off, this card be fine, this card's at 0, it could be at 3, whatever. I've seen a lot of that. Never once have I ever seen somebody say, you know what would be fine?
Yeah, I don't even
Mystic Mine coming back.
I don't even think I've seen Jeff Leonard post about that. Like, I feel like even the people who liked the card are like, yeah, I want it back, but we really shouldn't. So, like, I think it's good that it's still going.
Today, there was an entire discourse about Kit Kalos coming back. Today.
Hell no.
Absolutely not. That card cannot come back. Right?
The argument, like, I kind of want to break down the argument just a bit for the viewers, if they're not on Twitter.com. Which, good for you if you aren't.
Honestly.
The blue sky invite win. So the argument is basically, Kit Kalos can come to 1 if we just ban all the Ishizu cards. And my response to that is, absolutely not. No.
Agreed. And my thing is, at that point, why would you ban 4 more cards to bring 1 back?
Yes. Now, there is probably an argument to get rid of the Ishizus anyway, but I think at 1, they have caused basically no damage. They get to be cool utility pieces for decks that play them. So I don't really have a problem with them as things stand.
Here's my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kit Kalos is an obscene Yu-Gi-Oh card for a deck that is still topping events.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to be 21 and up to play the deck now. But I don't see how people can justify this card coming off the list. I don't think even if you bring the deck back at this point, like even if you bring Kitkalos back, the deck is still not what it was. It's still not the all-encompassing skill matchup that you want, right? It's just a Gamba deck still. It's a more consistent Gamba deck, but that's like going from, 5 to 3 odds at a blackjack table to 3 to 2 odds.
So, and the thing is, like,
Gamba.
if you give Tearlament an inch, they will take a mile. Tearlament got hit in the OCG over and over and over and over again. Even on this list,
Correct.
the Fenrir hit is essentially a tier hit.
Sure.
Like, before this list,
They refused to give it up.
Tearlament was still arguably like a top 5 deck. Like, there were people making arguments that it was the second best deck behind Rescue Ace.
Yes.
Like, don't give it more stuff. Because it's a mill
Let
deck,
the
right?
dead
Because it's a deck.
be dead.
Yeah, because it's a deck that does mill stuff, right? Like, with that, we'll get incidental support later.
Yeah.
It just will. Tons of decks that have that type of generic capability to them. Like Lightsworn is another example of a deck that lived for 12 billion years because it got like a bunch of incidental support. Now,
Correct.
that deck is also similar to Tyr in that it also had a bunch of that incidental support banned. But it's a similar case study where a whole bunch of stuff will support what this deck is doing later. So I don't think we need to be giving it back stuff this soon, especially when it's still fresh in people's minds. It's like
Right.
a scourge. Now, I will say,
I've run out of patience for my pet deck is okay to come back. The other ones aren't, but mine is. I just run out of it, dude. Like there are justifications that you can make for almost any card on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Limited list. You can actually point to almost any card in the list and give some kind of a justification for why it would maybe be okay to come back. I can point to That Grass is Greener and say, at 1, this card could potentially be fine. Right? People aren't deck building around it. And if people aren't deck building around it and everyone's on 40, then maybe it's a fine, even if you bump up to 60. Like, there's a justification there. It's not a good one.
Yeah.
Especially Thrust, but...
Okay. So, speaking of ban list justifications, the only reason I'm popping in on this is that I do actually have a take related to this for Pot of Greed. It's not my take, but it's a take that I want to hear what your reaction to it is.
I think I know where you're going with this. Go ahead, say it.
Okay, so the Pot of Greed argument, Helias, a fellow Albertan, I held a contest in a Discord one time that said I would send out something for or give somebody a roll. I think Helias, I might still owe you something, so hit me up if you're listening. But I basically said I'd send them something if they could give me their worst ban list take that they actually believed. And Helias came out with this. This was close to post the release of Prosperity. So
Sure.
Blazing Vortex. They said Pot of Greed should come to 1 because they're not going to ban Prosperity, and it would mean that there's a meaningful deck building decision between if you should play Pot of Greed or Pot of Prosperity. So it might dissuade some people from playing Pot of Prosperity, which is arguably a better card than Pot of Greed. Because if you activate the Pot of Greed, you can't activate a Pot of Prosperity. And if you activate a Pot of Prosperity, you can't activate the Pot of Greed. Obviously, I disagree with this take. However, in a universe where they don't ban Prosperity, there is a bit of sense here. I will say the easy way to shut this argument down is to say decks will just play them, and if they see both, oh no, what am I gonna do?
Right.
But anyway, like, you can get to that level of justification for most of the cards on the list, is the point I'm trying to make here.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. There is a legitimate argument to be made for unbanning Pot of Greed. Actually. And what's crazy is there's a real argument to be made on which would be a more okay, right? Graceful Charity or Pot of Greed. That's an argument to be made.
Yeah. I think Graceful Charity is a better card than Pot of Greed.
I think Pot of Greed would be more
if we're
okay to
being
come
real.
off the ban list.
If we're being real, I think I agree with you. The advantage you can get by pitching stuff makes
But
charity
the
a lot
counter
better, in my
argument
opinion.
is that Graceful Charity specifically, if you have no cards and you top deck Graceful Charity, it's worse of a card to top deck than Pot of Greed.
Yeah, but how often is that happening?
Almost never, but the point is you can make the argument.
Yeah. You can really get into the weeds on this stuff.
Yeah, so I am like coming back to Kit Kalos, it's like, dude, the card is broken. There's no reason to release it off the ban list. It's a format that 80% of the player base despised. Why would we do that to ourselves? Why would Konami do that to us? Which Konami does like doing stuff like that to us, but that's not the point. It's like Thunder Dragon Colossus. That card's not coming back.
Yeah.
They have no reason to bring that card back. Dragon Link is still a deck, right? Thunder Dragon's not, but that's fine because Thunder Dragon doesn't need to be a deck. Dragon Link is. And Colossus is an entirely far too easy floodgate on legs. It's just, there's no point.
Yeah. So what's
It
interesting
reminds
is...
me of Arise Heart. Arise Heart should be banned.
Yeah, it should go. I think we can be too scared of cards sometimes, right? So there is like... I think having the discussion is worth it. For example, I was very worried about Roll to 3 and Engage to 2. Sky Striker did just top 32 the remote YCS, but it hasn't really seen that much success at the regional level and further events. And I've been doing a lot of testing on Dueling Book for the YCS this weekend, and I haven't really run into Striker at all. So I think we can sometimes be too nervous about those. I will fully admit I was wrong about it. I might prove to be right later with the new support when that stuff comes out. But that I think it's still worth having that type of conversation. And with tier players, a lot of tier players really love that deck. People at my locals have the same take as GGYGO does, which is like every deck feels like it's terrible after you play tier element because of how strong it is. And so for those people, they're kind of looking for a game that they don't get to play anymore. It's kind of like people who are coming back from Yu-Gi-Oh! After a long time, where they're like, the game is different. It's for like the power level difference that had, it really was a different game that you were playing in those mirrors. And so I think people wanting a way to have that feeling back is definitely fair. But what's not fair is subjecting everyone else to it. So Kit should stay banned.
With that said, I think that's going to wrap up today's episode.
True. Well, we had another segment, but we're going to save it for next time. You'll have to watch to find out.
True. And to the people that I asked for opinions on this specific segment, I'm sorry. We do this a lot. I'm sorry. So tune in next time for some Edison content, because I'm sorry, because I suck. I'm sorry. We did not do Edison. We meant to, but we didn't. So, with that said, thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of the Top Cut Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast. Let's go ahead and thank all of our wonderful patrons. So, a huge thank you to Kane Martin, Zyphorus, Big Stinky, Broken Boy 13, Ding Dongs, Hostess of the Yang Zing, Earth Machine Best Deck. Has anyone actually read Toy Vendor? Still spelled wrong. Oof. HJ Cyber, I used to play Rogue, but then my mom got a job. Is Canada Nickelback, John Leo, Mountain Man, Oatmeal Spaghetti, Owen Alvarado, Seto Gawaiba. That's a good one. Silver Hope, there's only one rule. Pop the baby. Unbanned number 95. Konami, understanding and reading are two different things. Virtually Savior's World. You touch my ta-la-la, my dang-dang along. Aaron Gardner, Asami, Ashless Chaps, Etsuya, Simp at the Silver Castle, Blackwing Silver in the Ascendant is the best floodgate, Boxwine. Come on and get your game on. Duty Booty, Dragon Maidenless Behavior. I'm about to Rika Glimmer Tribute for Costies, Plant Nuts in Your Mouth. Old Man Red, Pin Code 143, Sakitama, Aritama, Nikitama, Cam Obama, Slaking It Up, and Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, Heavy Samurai. Whew! Thank you all so much for your continued support of the podcast. And of course, be sure to check out all of our sponsors down below, and be sure to check out our Patreon for that extra episode every week. And also to all of our patrons, come on, man, step the name game up. I need new, better names. Come on.
Y'all have, I mean, honestly, they've been doing a bang up job. Let people soak their names in for like a week or two. And
that's fine, but they haven't changed in a few episodes, so.
So, y'all
get
are.
on that.
I appreciate some of these names sticking around for a long time if they're really good. But changing them, it is definitely one of the highlights of our episodes when we see a name and we just start laughing at it. So
it is. I genuinely love it. So With that said, thank you all so much for tuning in to today's episode. Like I said, be sure to check back. Next episode, I think we're planning to do an Edison primer for those planning on attending the North America World Championship qualifier, where they'll have tons and tons and tons of Edison Time Wizard events. So with that said, thank you all so much, and we'll catch you next time. Have a great week, everyone.
Owl. See you later.